This podcast is brought to you by Podspot Events.
Hello and welcome to the Bondi Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Beattie. The guest on this episode is Matt Ringrose. Matt's the founder and teacher at the Bondi Meditation Centre. Now, I first came across Matt as he was leading a big group meditation down in Bondi Beach as part of the One Wave 10th birthday event back in March this year. Very shortly after that event, I found myself up at the Bondi Meditation Centre at the free intro talk. And it was during the talk I learned a little bit about Matt's story and his journey to meditation and how it's improved his life for the better. And in May this year, I was taught by Matt the practice of Vedic Meditation. I've been meditating for 20 minutes twice a day ever since. In this episode, Matt talks about how he started off life as a professional house DJ back in the UK, his battles with addiction, and then how he came across Vedic meditation and how it changed his life for the better. If you like what you hear in this episode, I'd really encourage you to go and check Matt out at the Bondi Meditation Centre. You can find them on Instagram at Bondi Meditation or check out their website. And remember to give us a follow on Instagram at the Bondi Podcast. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll find all our episodes on Spotify. Cheers. Matt, welcome to the podcast. Thanks very much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Apologies
for the greasy appearance. Just fresh out of Pilates.
I should have told you that we're actually videoing the episode as well.
I thought I'd be safe, but it's going to be recorded for posterity.
Yeah, well, it's just a natural look, mate.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we are in Bondi. People often are cutting about in activewear, looking quite sweaty. So
almost always.
It's on brand.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, good.
Speaking of on brand, first question, Matt.
Yeah.
What's your favourite thing about Bondi?
I think it's that there are enough people here that seem to really enjoy it and feel lucky to be here. Because there's some transient people moving through, and you know what it's like when on holiday, you always really appreciate it. But I think also, you get people bitching about Bondi, but I think a lot of the people who live here feel genuinely lucky. And I do. And that just creates a nice vibe. Mm-hmm. I like that kind of excitement that we have in the air.
Do you think if we removed the transient population, it would still feel the same?
If we removed the transient population? Yeah, I think people here, what it is they have a bit of a connection with nature because it's such a beautiful place and you can't help but appreciate the beauty of the ocean, the beach, go on the walk. So I think you'd still have that appreciation. Yeah.
And then the flip to that then I suppose is what's your least favourite thing about Bondi?
I don't really focus on the negatives.
I love it. It's very on brand, Matt. Very on brand. Yeah. We will get into that side of things, the meditation side of things, the consciousness side of things. But where I'd actually really like to start this conversation is your background as a professional house DJ.
Okay.
I know you still play a bit now. Let's take us back to the start.
All right. So DJing. I remember hearing a record on BBC Radio 1 and it was like an acid house record by a band called The Beloved. That had been back in about 88. So I am showing my age. So, and then I ended up at an acid house party quite soon after that. And I'd have been around 15, 16 at the time. I really didn't know quite what was going on. I was just getting off with this girl. But it was good music kind of going boop, 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 basically. And a strobe and smoke machine. And a lot of other people who seemed very engrossed in the music. And then quickly graduated to a family holiday in Ibiza, where a barman befriended me. I later found out he may have had some ulterior motives, but that's for another time. And took me to a club called Amnesia, which was then in an outdoor, just a few kind of walls, a kind of stone walls and all outdoors. And it was playing a song seemingly over and over again. And the song I realised afterwards was called French Kiss by Lil Louis, just come out. And nobody seemed to take any notice of me. And I was like, I felt a bit aggrieved by that because I've had my best shirt on, and all this. I'd have been 16. And there's, again, very engrossed in something. And then it's filled with foam. It filled with foam. I didn't know what was going on, but it was incredible. Like, the atmosphere, I'd never seen anything like it. And so that was my baptism, really, or those were a couple of baptisms. And I came back from that holiday in Ibiza, and I remember I was reading in some magazine or other, it was well before the internet, I was reading some magazine or other about this new hypnotic music, and I was like, oh wow, is that what I was listening to? And I went and bought a couple of the records, and I bought French Kiss by Lil Louis, and that's when it started. And then a mate showed me how to beat match on it. He had a couple of 1210s, and so ever since then, there's not a day goes by. Well, there is one caveat to that which we could explore, but generally speaking, I listen to house music every day. Like, it's Paul Mairead, my partner, and every other partner. It's just always there. Because my mate described it as the endless search for the perfect beat. I just love house music and the way it just modulates, it evolves slightly, and every now and then you hear one that's just spot on. And you get those together and you want to share them with other people, and that's DJing. And I've got a party on Saturday night.
Beautiful.
Well, I'll be doing that.
And I suppose it must have got to a point where eventually people start saying, hey, you're pretty good, we'll pay you to do this. Yeah.
So got together with a few mates at university. That's when it started happening. We had a sound system called Giddy Fruit. And tomorrow night, or rather Saturday night, is my mate, one of Giddy Fruit's 50th birthday. So we've all been DJing together for 30 years. And another Giddy Fruit is coming over from New Zealand. So we're all playing at this party. And then we started doing a few nights, and they were going well. And we'd play, we'd be like a kind of little baby backup sound system for some very famous sound systems. One of which is called Smokescreen, one of which is called DIY. And these sound systems put on parties in the countryside, absolutely anarchic, crazy affairs.
In England?
In England, yeah. Generally around the Midlands, and you just go out and they're gone for days, and everyone would be absolutely spannered. And it would be quite a surreal experience to attend, and the most incredible crowd to play to. So we were lucky. We kind of piggybacked on the back of that. And then I went to Paris, had my own little moment of fame where I actually got quite a few decent gigs at big clubs. And since then, I've just kind of ticked over. I was making a living out of it at one point, not a particularly luxurious living, but a living. But then other jobs took over, but it's never gone away. I always think, maybe it's going to become irrelevant. But seemingly not, because I still like it.
Was there a point in time where you thought you'd, aspire to be one of these DJs who maybe has a residency in Ibiza and travels the world and plays gigs here, there and everywhere?
Not consciously, but then I was receiving a record not that long ago, and a mate turned up who's a fellow DJ, and he put the record in from the postman outside and passed it to me. He goes, Matt, it's never going to happen, you realise. And I thought, I was like slightly offended. And then I realised, I kind of still thought on some weird 1% level, maybe it will. Yeah. But I've achieved my own level of satisfactory. It's without being too pompous or grandiose. It's more for me about not about the exposure or how many people necessarily know about me as a DJ, because it's fuck all. Excuse my French. A few hundred, maybe a few thousand.
Maybe a few more now.
Maybe, but I love choosing the right tunes and putting the mix together. It's incredibly satisfying. And I'll be playing at Lost Paradise Festival this new year, and it'll be amazing. I'll love it. There'll be people there in the woods, big sound system, and they'll get really into it. And that's all I want. I don't want anything else apart from that moment of interaction, satisfaction with the dancers.
Beautiful. Any gigs coming up in Sydney?
Yeah, there's one. We're doing a new little night. It's not a night at all. It's a day at the Diggers. So not the most prestigious sounding event, but we think we might have discovered a good little place, because Diggers is, if you don't know, North Bondi kind of golf club, and there's this outdoor area there with a few benches, and we're going to put in some shade and do a daytime party there with a decent sound system on, I think it's the 11th of November.
I'll be coming along to that then.
All right, yeah, that'll be good. That'll be a good party. Be like all day until sundown.
Amazing.
But good music, good house music, yeah.
Brilliant. Beautiful. So at some point, you transitioned from DJing over in Europe and most of the UK, but the move to Oz, when did that take place and what sparked that?
That was 21 years ago. And that was my ex-wife, Sally, who was a resident of Australia. And she'd brought me over here for a look, and I liked the look of it, but I was a bit attached. I had a French translation business in England. And I was kind of like, quite enjoying myself in England and not that motivated to leave. But then, without putting too fine a point on it, a few bad habits were creeping up, which were quite bad, and which I realised could be alleviated through a geographical change. And so the move to Australia was suddenly more practical and attractive. So we basically just went, yeah, all right, left everything behind, came over here. I think we had about something like £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 between us, and just got a flat in Bondi with our son, Joe, at the time. There's another one now called Jack as well. And we just set about it. And we can explore what happened after that if you'd like.
And you said the move was prompted by some bad habits.
Yeah.
Did the bad habits disappear when you moved to Australia?
They just transformed.
Okay.
They changed shape and form, but basically...
Can you provide a little bit more colour around that?
Yeah. Basically, I went through the journey that is relatively common amongst my friends. I realise it's not necessarily common amongst the wider public, but where you start off acid house, it's a hedonistic period, famous for its drug use, and had some great times with those kind of drugs and those kind of parties. And then as time went on, it kind of metastasized or changed into more problematic drug use. And it became more habitual and more destructive. So, moving away from England, you might think, well, you out of the frying pan into the fire because it's still over here. But certain things were harder to get hold of over here, and it actually helped that side of things. But it just, it's like they say, you stamp out the fire and it pops up somewhere else. To this day, my addictions pop up elsewhere. They've just become much less extreme and much less destructive. Yeah. These days, my addiction would be like to a fizzy drink.
Yeah, fair.
A fizzy non-alcoholic drink. Whereas once upon a time, it was something more destructive, like cocaine and things like that.
Yeah. And when you say destructive, how was that showing up in your personal life?
Yeah, it never got to the stage where it obliterated my personal life or even my professional life. That all carried on okay, but emotionally, spiritually, very destructive. And in terms of relationships, it will have been insidious and eroded them. But it wasn't catastrophic on the surface, but it was becoming increasingly difficult emotionally.
Mm-hmm. So when you first moved to Australia, then I know you eventually started up a fairly successful wine marketing business, but was there anything before that?
No, there wasn't actually. Kind of. I got to Australia, and previous to being in Australia, I'd been a French translator because I did my degree in French, and I worked out a little niche for translating birth certificates into French for students going to France. So I just churned away in my pyjamas with an overflowing ashtray in Nottingham in my bedroom these birth certificate translations. It was a good little business. I thought I'd made it, because I had checks coming through the front door letterbox. It was great. But then I got over to Australia, and French, I just realised I was looking for jobs with French. There was nothing. Of course there isn't, or hardly anything. There's not a lot of French going around here. It's a long way from France. So I was like, okay, well, let's remove French. What else? I didn't have a clue. And then I met this guy, a friend of Sally's, and he said, you want to get into selling wine? I was like, oh yeah, what do you mean? He goes, you can make loads of money, especially if you're English. I was like, I didn't really get it. So I was calling up these wine bottle shops, trying to get jobs selling wine. And I had an interview, and then I met this bloke again. He goes, I said, yeah, well, I've got this interview with the bottle shop. He goes, bottle shop? What are you talking about? No. Selling wine for investment by the barrel. And if you're English, it's you're more likely to have the knack, and people are more likely to buy off you. I was like, okay. So I went to this job and started selling wine for investment. And I could do it. I could weirdly do it. I could get basically a list of numbers, speak to a complete stranger, and within a few minutes convinced them to buy a barrel of wine for somewhere between $3,000 and $10,000 that they'd never tasted.
Wow.
I know. And I thought it was exciting, and we were told and sold a pretty good story that this, we were scammed basically as salespeople, because we were told that there was this office in America and it was all going to be sold on there for profit. And so we bought into this story. They had a very fashionable office in Martin Place, overlooking Square, and we're like, this is great, and we'd make good commissions. And then we started realising, these people, they're getting their wine, but there's not really an exit strategy. It's not really an on-selling opportunity. So I got very uncomfortable very quickly. I was doing well, but, I didn't like it. And I said to one of the people there, the sales manager, I said, get me out of here, I hate it. He goes, what do you mean, you're killing it? I said, no, but I hate it because I don't believe it anymore. And so he goes, if you're serious, come and meet me. And I went off and met him and the buyer from the business, and the three of us set up a different business, which was just selling wine to people to drink. And the model was that we were, we knew the power of the phone to sell wine. We knew the power of telephone broking. But what we did was we got the list of wineries, of their databases. They gave us their list. And then we called up those people and sold them wine from that winery in the first person under the guise of being the winery. So we used our sales skills, because the people at the cellar doors, they wouldn't be geniuses at sales or anything, but we could ring up and just use the telesales skills and sell their wine, and they had the goodwill because it was their own customers. So we did that, and then that ended up being a successful business where we represented lots of wineries.
Amazing. Australian wineries?
Yeah, and eventually New Zealand and French as well.
Beautiful. So when did you start that business?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like it's around... So I've been teaching since 2012. I probably started that around 2004. Mm-hmm. I ran it for like about 5 years, till 2005 and 2009 or 10. And then it got bought.
Who came in? Big
company. Yeah, it got acquired as part of an acquisition by Woolworths, actually.
Fantastic.
So that meant I could do something else, and what I wanted to do was teach this meditation thing, which I suppose we should talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what I'd learned. So at some point during owning that company, everything was going well, we were doing well, but my kind of lifestyle choices were still problematic.
Can you give some examples there, Matt?
Oh yeah, just like drinking and taking drugs. Yeah, drinking and taking drugs.
And you're still married at this point?
Yeah.
To Sally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't cope with it. The come downs were terrible, and it was just having an horrible effect on me and on my family. But I couldn't stop. And then I just stumbled upon this meditation. I was actually reading a book by David Lynch. Do you know David Lynch?
I've not come across him.
Right. Well, he made a show called Twin Peaks. And Twin Peaks was my favourite show growing up. It's a very strange show, but I loved it. And I just stumbled upon this book, which was by David, about his creative process, how he made Twin Peaks, how he made his other films. And I was curious, so I just got the book, started reading it, but then it turns out this book it is about his creative process, but equally every other page he's talking about this particular meditation he practices. And it just sounds great. I'm like, whoa. He says basically, he goes, don't worry if you haven't been able to do other meditations, because I hadn't been able to. I tried them before. He goes, do this one. Go and find yourself a guru. They'll give you a sound, which you think inside your mind, which is especially for you. You close your eyes, you think that sound, and it's like you're in a lift shaft, and somebody cuts the cord and you go down into this deeper part of yourself. And then you do that 20 minutes twice a day. Everything in your life spontaneously will get better. And everyone can do it. And I was like, I told Sally, and I said, I'm going to go and do this thing. She goes, that sounds weird. Because really then, it wasn't meditation. We're going back 15, 16 years. It's hard to believe really now, but meditation was quite weird then.
Yeah.
It's like, what? And the lift shaft and but I was like, I remember saying to her, I'm doing it. Like, I decided I was going to go and do this thing, and I went and did it and found my guru in York Street, closed my eyes, got my sound, away I went.
So was this at the point where you're probably at your most destructive in Australia, Matt?
Yeah. I just had a really nasty little run-in with my business partners as well, which was really kind of maybe pushed me there to the meditation. And it was really showing up some of my lower qualities, making it very clear to me. Yeah, destruction was coming in. So in the nick of time, found this thing, and it changed everything. It's no exaggeration. It's literally no exaggeration to say it changed everything.
So you found a guru on York Street, probably didn't really know it.
He wasn't just wandering around.
Yeah.
He was in a podiatrist. He was also a podiatrist. But basically I went on the internet, and there were these forums. It took me ages. Like these days, you want to find Vedic meditation, you just go Vedic meditation. Bondi Meditation Centre. What an excellent looking establishment. But in those days, you're going through a rabbit warren of forums. I eventually found this guy who operated out of a podiatrist's office in York Street in Sydney. And I went and learned. He taught me great. He taught me what I needed to know.
So what, from those first few teachings and those first few meditations, like what were the early signs? What are the early things you started to notice within yourself?
Yeah, well, first things first, I did the meditation, and then that weekend I went out in usual situation, Friday night, all the temptations are there. And as usual, I went out saying, I'm not going to do it, because I didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? I really didn't want to do it. The difference was this time, I didn't do it. There was a little bit of, what would you call it, autonomy, actual true freedom or agency returned to me so I could make a decision. I had enough willpower, another way of putting it, enough self-discipline on that occasion to not do it.
So not even a beer?
No, nothing.
Wow.
Because I knew it was all or nothing. It was all or nothing.
So what did your friends say?
On that occasion, not a lot. I think they just, because it wasn't like I did it every time. But then what happened was they'd usually expect a capitulation at some point.
They've seen it all before.
Yeah,
Matt's going cold turkey.
Yeah, it's going like that. But then, you know, in all the situations, it might have been by hair's breadth. I can't remember the exact situations, but the fact is I kept on getting away without doing anything. I definitely still had desires at that stage, but I also had something else, which was enough space to not be overwhelmed or overshadowed by the desire and pulled into the action. That was the difference. But then over time, it just receded. The desires started to dissolve, and they started to go more and more. And, you know, it just stop thinking about it. Like these days, I can't conjure that desire. I used to, for quite a long time, even though I wasn't doing anything, I'd fantasize about it. And I'd think about a particular combination of something or other. And I'd get excited. I can't do that anymore. It's gone. The flame is extinguished. It's not there. I can't conjure it. So I guess I'm free of it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and have in the bar in a minute and have a beer. Because the reason I'm free of it is meditation expands your state of consciousness. You have a beer, that reduces your state of consciousness, you're back on the... So I'm not going to, that's like kind of taking off the Superman suit, as it were. I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon.
And aside from that aspect, what else did you start to notice, maybe more wider? Yeah,
so more widely, I felt... Because I'd had like mental health issues for a long time, but I realised I'd actually been depressed.
Do you get diagnosed?
Yeah, on and off in my life, I've been diagnosed with depression. And at the point where I learned, I didn't think I was depressed necessarily. But when I learned the meditation, I was like, oh shit, I was depressed. Because the comparative, how I felt after I learned was very different. An analogy I like to use, because I like music, is imagine you had a really good speaker. It's like top line speaker, music speaker, but you've got like a blanket over it and you're playing music on it. Sounds all right and you get used to it, you know? But then one day you go, oh, bloody hell, I've got a blanket over it. You take the blanket off, and the richness of the sound and your engagement with it takes a whole new... That's what life was like for me. I remember a few things, like I remember going down to North Bondi, and I was in the rock pools. I was with my son Jack, who was little at the time. It'd have been, 3 or 4 or something. And I remember thinking, were there always this many colours of green? There was things like that I started noticing. What else? The main thing I noticed was that I wasn't constantly trying to get something.
What do you mean by that?
I wasn't constantly looking for fulfillment outside of myself. There was some kind of inner peace that was arising, a sense of something produced from the inside that wasn't dependent on the outside external circumstances. So it was like, you'd call it an absence of agitation, maybe, peacefulness. And you call it an absence of lack, so happiness or fulfillment. Those were starting to become my baseline experience. And so I guess my values changed accordingly. What I really enjoyed doing, what I thought was important changed.
And looking back at yourself, Matt, sort of pre-meditation, can you see instances in your life where you constantly looking for that, seeking for that like, external
I think we'll probably call it, the preceding 35 years.
Yeah.
It would have been all about that. Because that's,
like what?
No offence to human beings, but but that's what we're always doing. If we haven't discovered an inner fulfillment, then it's natural to want to be happier, be more fulfilled. So what we do is we look externally, and there's an understanding that's conveyed through culture, through everything, through society, that there are 3 main ways of getting that fulfillment. And we're taught it from our earliest days. And we basically believe it and just go along with it. And that is that if you get enough stuff, if you achieve enough stuff, and maybe in the get part, we could add in, you get or you find a really good relationship, those things will make you happy. Yeah?
Simple.
So acquire lots of things, show them off, maybe increase your status or sense of power. Achieve things, will give you a sense of purpose and also maybe increase your status, self-esteem. And then, fall in love, and hopefully that will deliver a consistent sense of peace and fulfillment forever. Get those things happily ever after. The problem is that all of them only last for a certain period of time. The acquisitions, particularly short-lived, new pair of trainers, probably 5 minutes that you're fully fulfilled and don't need anything else, and then you're like off hunting again. I think I need, a can of Coke in my case. You get your house of your dreams, you might get a week or 2 out of it, but sooner or later you're going to want something else, right? Achievements is an interesting one. People who achieve things, there's an interesting study group that got studied rather, Oscar winners. So that's a good example of people who've really achieved something. So they've often been working for many years, and then finally the pinnacle achievement, professional achievement, they win an Oscar. Does it make them happy? Yeah, very. For a night at least. Very happy. They've, many of them say it's the best night of their lives, and they feel...
Except for Will Smith.
Yeah, we'll leave him out of it. It wasn't the best for Will. But most of them, have a better night than Will, and at least get a slap on the back rather than... and they feel acknowledgement and high self-esteem, all that good stuff, sense of satisfaction. But then, according to the Oscar winners themselves, how long does it last? How long do they remain happier than they were before they won the Oscar? To their astonishment and horror, about a week. Maybe 10 days in some cases. But around a week, they reckon, after which it's like, oh shit, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. I still need something. I know. I'll try and get the Oscar next year. I'll get an Oscar next year and then I'll have 2, and that might do it. Or maybe a new film offer or something. I don't know, a Golden Globe or a good review. The hunt for fulfillment just is back on. It wasn't peace and fulfillment. It lasted for a little while. And that's why we all believe it, because it does last for a little while. And then you get the relationship, and gets better, because a romantic relationship is the most rich and rewarding experience a human being can have, apart from enlightenment, right? So you get a longer amount of fulfillment. For about 9 months, you can be fulfilled just in that relationship. About 9 months. World record 18 months. You're not going beyond that. It's been studied because there's a certain chemistry that can be produced for around 9 months, 6 to 9 months on average. And then after that, the chemistry kind of falls away, and you can't any longer just be fulfilled by the relationship itself if you're not fulfilled in your life in general. You go to the relationship, look for your fulfillment, it's not there, something wrong with the relationship, can it? Or just feel frustrated, or enter into many years of resentful coexistence. So that's all of those things are what we think will provide happiness, but no human being in the history of mankind, womankind, in the history of humans, has ever found lasting peace and fulfillment, satisfaction, purely in acquiring things and achieving things, or in relationships. They might have found it, but it wasn't because of those external events, objects, relationships. It was because they found some way of accessing fulfillment inside. And the way that I found it, it's by no means the only way, I'm sure, but the way that I found it was through Vedic meditation. It tapped me into a place inside myself that was naturally fulfilled and peaceful. So I felt that anyway, and then I could go out into the world and be a bit more playful. It wasn't like I needed the next fix all the time. Because when you need the next fix, you'll do anything to get it. And you'll do things that aren't particularly good for you, like I was doing. You might even run over someone else's interests to get the thing so it might not be very nice. But as soon as you start to feel fulfilled inside, you go from needing to take all the time and the problems that are associated with that to wanting to give. Just a natural flip. All humans, as soon as we start feeling fulfilled, you want to give. You want to share the fulfillment, uplift others, and that's what I found. So obviously the job for me was meditation teacher, teach other people this thing.
Yeah, so that's sort of the next thing I want to touch on, Matt, is that transition from learning the practice, practicing consistently, and then transitioning from practicing to teaching. How long was that period, or what was the sort of the light bulb moment where you thought, hey, I could teach this, I want to share this with others?
Yeah, it's weird. I think it was about 3 or 4 years, probably 3 years. The light bulb moment wasn't like a flash that went off. It was just like a dawning of absolute knowingness and choicelessness. I don't remember one moment going, oh my God, I've got an idea. Why don't I go out and teach people this? It was just like, I was going to do it. Of course I'm going to do it. I found this thing which changed everything for me, including the thing which apparently nothing could change, which was the addictions part, which I tried all the usual stuff, the groups, been hypnotised by the world's greatest addictions hypnotist twice and still carried on, and it changed that. So I think at the very least, well, I've got to let people know that it helps with that.
That's a poor advertisement for that hypnotist. Oh, you again?
Yeah. It wasn't. Whenever you're going twice to the world's greatest hypnotist for the same issue. So that was just a natural thing, and I don't remember the moment. No. I just it's almost like my family just knew as well. We all knew. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to do it. Okay,
go for it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the teacher training.
Oh yeah. Teacher training, Vedic meditation teacher training is no picnic. It's an unusual thing. You have to go away. You have several interviews to make sure you're okay. Somehow I sneaked through those. Probably should have been turned away. Maybe a couple of little white lies on the application form. But yeah, so you go into isolation basically. And
where?
In my case, it was the one time they tried it on the northern tip of Bali, on the side of this volcano. They never did it there again, mainly because it was so bloody hot.
And who's they?
They. My teacher he's a guy called Tom Knowles. And he was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's assistant for many years. And he's generally seen to be like the preeminent teacher of teachers. So him and a couple of his colleagues basically supervised me meditating for up to 14 hours a day in this isolation for 3 months, which in itself is tough because it just unearths all sorts of demons. And it definitely did for me. It was no laughing matter. But at the same time, because that's not enough, you have to do all these bizarre and very difficult memorization tests. So the whole process is designed to get you really stressed, which sounds like an odd thing, but the idea is it's to release that stress so that you come back from the training and you're an empty vessel that's rid him or herself of their own neediness and are ready to serve. It kind of worked. I got rid of it, but I was a ragged husk of a man when I returned. It took me about 2 years to get over it.
Wow.
I was teaching in that time, and people were having good experiences, so it was all right. But personally, I felt shocking. I was putting the pieces back together for a long time.
How did you do that?
Panchakarma was a key turning point. So teaching, firstly, my teacher said, teach your way out of it, so I did. I had psychotherapy 3 times a week at the peak. I was also, I went and got this Ayurvedic healing in India, which is like, Ayurvedic is the health branch of this meditation, and you basically get loads of oil massages and purification. I got loads of that done in India for 6 weeks, and just time eventually healed me.
What was coming up, Matt?
Anything irrelevant. So any of my attachments, things that I was attached to that weren't serving my evolution, became unbearable. And that's what happens. Like, you know, I was putting my hand up and saying, right, I want to change people's lives powerfully. I want a very responsible position. And yet I had my own stuff which was unresolved. I had attachments and things that were still getting in the way of that, of me being the best teacher. One of which was my marriage. And so there was a agonizing process of disconnecting from that. I had to let go of my house. I had to let go of so many things. But if we were to summarize, we'd say that it's a purification of any untruths within your life. Anything you're lying to yourself about, and anything which is an attachment which is pulling you into doing the wrong thing on some level. And by the wrong thing, I mean something which isn't serving you. It's not helping your evolution. It's holding you back.
And your marriage was doing that?
Yeah, but not because anything wrong with Sally or anything like that. It was just that it had performed its role.
It had got you to that point.
Yeah, it got us both to that point, and it had helped us both grow. But the next part of its way it was going to help us was in leaving it, which was going to be an extreme exercise in surrender. So that ended up being a very instructive and illuminating process. Actually, was probably my greatest fear was leaving that marriage. So leaving it, it wasn't actually my choice. This is the way it often operates. It's like you're forced to. If you're not doing it, you'll be forced to. That was a very liberating, actually, in the end.
I bet. So the summary there is that teacher training's not for the faint-hearted.
That's not for the faint of heart. If there's anything you're holding on to that you'd like to keep holding on to, that might not be serving you, good luck.
Wow.
You'll have it all dragged. We'll have it all dragged away. And not necessarily at time, but eventually.
Yeah.
Because you're accelerating your evolution massively.
So post-teacher training, you come back to Australia and start teaching people right away?
Yeah. So I come back. I'm feeling shocking. But students are lining up. I'm like getting a lot of students. I'm like, oh.
How? Because I'm imagining this was, how long ago?
This is 11 years ago.
11 years ago. And as you said, like even 11 years ago, meditation wouldn't have been
it wasn't
that
massive.
popular. So
so I just taught a few close friends, family, and then just started getting the referrals coming through. And I think I just kept turning up. I do my intro talk every week. I teach. I'd always be there. I do a group meditation every week. And
was this at your house before the?
It was at my house,
before the meditation centre was up and running.
Yeah, I've been a bit of a grinder on it. I've just always turned up. And just kept going. And then I was in there early. I got the Bondi Meditation Centre URL, which is helpful, and people started searching for Bondi Meditation. And I think I got in at a good time. Before it really went bang, before it went boom, before the apps turned up, so that when they did and there was more demand, I was kind of in a good position.
Yeah. So,
and I did the meditations down the beach as well. That was a big kind of like billboard for it. We turned up every Thursday morning down at sunrise at the beach, and people found out about it through that.
Yeah. So, transitioning then from the house to the Bondi Meditation Centre, how did that all come about?
Yeah, for
those that don't know, Bondi Meditation Centre is on the corner of Old Southhead and O'Brien.
That's right, yeah. So, that was the mother of all invention. In order to, getting a bit oversharing here, but in order to, we got divorced, and then I had to give Sally half the house, as it were. But I didn't want to because I was running the business from there. So I had to get a massive mortgage to try and keep hold of it. And for about 3 years I could. I ran retreats there, I ran parties there, I ran meditation courses every week. I just turned at the house. I just turned it into this, money making thing. But I also, because I was self-employed, and this is maybe a bit too much detail, but I had to get basically a loan sharky type mortgage. Not quite, but it's well off the high street. And the interest rate was incredibly high, and it suddenly jumped even higher. And I was like, oh shit, 10 grand a month or something. I can't do it. I suddenly realised I've got to sell it. And at about that same time, somebody tipped me off on this space, and which is the Bondi Meditation Centre of today. And I went and had a look, and I was like, it's pretty good, This is pretty good. I could get a little flat. I'd be sweet. So I got it. And then I didn't really think too much about it, and I sold the house, got the flat, had the space, and then did the first group meditation there, sat down in there. Oh dear. It's on the busiest T-junction in London City. Absolute pandemonium. I'm in there like, I've never done a meditation in here before. Interesting. Now it's very quiet, I can really tell. So then began a process of soundproofing the joint, and that was successful, fortunately. So now it's actually a surprisingly tranquil oasis.
I can testify to that.
Yeah. So that was good, but that was a funny moment. Oh, not funny, it was horrifying.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet. So how many people have you taught over the years then, Matt?
We've not sure exactly, but it's over 3,500 in Bondi.
Wow, fantastic. Right, let's actually get into the practice itself. You touched on it a little bit earlier. So for those that don't know, it's 2 lots of 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
As part of, I can only speak to my experience. So I learned with Matt. Matt gave me my mantra, and Matt, you talked about it earlier. That's the sort of the sound or the word that you sort of repeat in your head.
Yeah.
So talk us through the practice.
Yeah. So lots of practice, lots of meditations are all about concentrating, and they might even have a mantra that you concentrate on, or you might concentrate on your breath. These are the most well-known ones. And so what you do is, with those ones, you'll sit there without anything behind you. You might cross your legs, sit on like that, and concentrate on something. And they're called concentrative practices, and they account for 99% of meditations. So what you're doing is you're trying to control the mind into silence. You're trying to force it to do something unnatural. And people can do them and have fantastic experiences. I can't do them, and I'm not alone. Lots of other people can't do them. But in an almost too good to be true revelation, it turns out there's another type of meditation which is easier, so easy in fact, and seems to be at least as effective, if not controversially, but probably more effective than the difficult ones. And that's a non-concentrative practice. So what happens in Vedic meditation is you get a mantra, but you're not sitting there trying to remember it all the time. you allow it to kind of repeat in the mind in a very effortless way. And it's actually in the drifting off the mantra that you drift into deeper states. So the mantras themselves work because they have two qualities. One of them is that they're attractive and appealing to the mind, more attractive than thoughts, at least for a little while. And the other one is that they're literally mind or consciousness vehicles. When you have your attention on them, they take you into a deeper space, or you could say a deeper part of yourself. So this combination of these two qualities, the fact that the mind likes this shiny thing and that it's going somewhere deeper, is how it works. And all you have to do is go along for the ride. You don't have to sit there trying to make anything happen. You just, bring this sound into your mind, and as you sit there thinking it will naturally drift away and take you with it.
And there's this, one of the things that you mentioned during the training was, you effortlessly think the mantra.
Yeah.
You don't force it. What's the thinking behind the effortlessness?
Yeah, because the mantra becomes more powerful the more subtle it becomes, the more faint it becomes. And when we try to think the mantra, it remains as this quite gross kind of sound. The mind might even not particularly like that sound, and it doesn't do a lot. But when you're nice and easy with it, then it'll fade away. And as it fades away, then it becomes more powerful, the softer it becomes.
Let's talk about the mantra for just a couple of minutes, because it was something I found fascinating when I first learnt this practice. Was sort of everyone, well, not everyone, but most people, you generally get a different mantra to someone else, and you're not allowed to tell anyone your mantra.
That's right.
What's the thinking there, or what's going on there?
The reason for that, the main reason, is that it's about the purity of the teaching. Let's say the opposite was the case. Let's say that you get your mantra and go and tell your whole family, tell your mates. What are they going to do? Going to have a go with it, aren't they? Now, a few things might happen. They could have a go with it. It might not be the right mantra for them, probably won't be. So they might not have the experience that's optimal. Or it might be the right mantra for them, and they don't know how to use it properly because they haven't been taught by an expert over several days. Because whilst it's a simple technique, there's a lot of nuance and detail in there that we spend. It took me like about 4 hours to teach you how to be effortless. They're not going to have that, so they're going to do it, and they're going to go, this don't do anything. Immediately you're starting to get a reputation for a practice which was sacred, very powerful, can change people's lives. It's diluted right down, and people think, it's all right, but it's not all that. It's because it's not taught properly. You're starting to really dilute the tradition and the benefit it can bring to people. Or they might get the right mantra for them, and they might nail the technique absolutely, whatever. They just intuitively can do it. Then they're practicing a very powerful technique. And there's a reason why the course is 4 days long. It's for a couple of hours a day for 4 days. And there's a reason why you get lifetime support from your teacher. And they're both the same kind of reason. And the reason is that as you go through the process, it's good to have support. Because in that first 4 days, one of the reasons it's 4 days is so that I or the teacher can keep an eye on the student and make sure they're okay, because you start to release a lot of stress in the first few days. But then the experiences you have after a week are going to be different to the experiences you have after a month, and they'll be different to the experiences you have after 6 months and a year. So it's very good to have a teacher who's seen that and understands those contexts to be there to support you ongoingly. So those are a few reasons.
Matt, let's do a little bit of myth busting, because there's a few things that you talk to meditation about someone and they say, I'm no good at meditation, and they give you the usual reasons here. So for that first one, so if someone says, I'm no good at meditating,
what would I say? I'd say neither am I. I tried loads of types, couldn't do any of them. Fortunately, this one's for dummies.
Yeah.
I couldn't comment on any of the meditations. As far as I'm concerned, they're pretty tricky. But this one, all you need to do, you don't need to concentrate, you don't need to control the mind, force it to do anything unnatural. All you do is close the eyes, think a meaningless sound, and let go. And that's basically it.
Simple.
Yeah.
What about I don't have the time?
Then I'd say you got your priorities all messed up. Because I'd say you don't have the time, but is there anything missing from your life? When I say anything, I mean, without being, patronising, is there any fulfillment missing? Is there any peace missing? Is there any joy missing? And, everyone will say, yeah. I say, well, all those things you're doing, which seem absolutely essential, it might be worth reassessing them, because actually, yes, we have our responsibilities and we might have kids and things like that, but generally speaking, everything we do because we think, not necessarily consciously, but on some level, we do them because we think they're going to take us closer to more peace and more fulfillment and more happiness. You might say, no, you're a human being. Everything you do is in some way about that. But none of them will. None of them will guarantee you a baseline, consistent level of peace and fulfillment. But this meditation is the only thing that I found that does. So you start with that, find yourself fulfilled. You're going to save all that amount of time looking for fulfillment in your day. Whatever, looking at your phone for all that time or going and getting your coffee. If you remove all that hunt for fulfillment, you're going to find you've got a lot of time left to do things which are actually useful. So that's what I'd say.
Like start a podcast.
Re-examine your priorities.
Yeah. I can't meditate. There's too much going on in my head.
It's perfect time to meditate. You'll really enjoy the before and after experience. Most people, myself included, come to meditation to escape the onslaught of thoughts. But this meditation won't be trying to stop the onslaught of thoughts by go away, control it. What will happen is you won't try and control the thoughts at all. The more thoughts, the better. Absolutely fine. You're just going to surf effortlessly around whatever's happening in the mind. And by doing that, guess what? It's going to start to settle down, and eventually you'll find that peace which underlies the thoughts. But not by trying to. I have people that come to learn a meditation that, they're various neurodivergence and ADHD and just hypervigilant. And then there are people coming that say, I've been doing yoga for 20 years. And they'll both get it just as quickly. The practice is powerful, and it doesn't matter whether you have a very busy mind. It doesn't take any prisoners. We're not looking to reduce the busyness of the mind. It just happens.
I know this last one's a favourite one of yours, Matt. I only have time to do one meditation a day.
This came up at Greek meditation, didn't it? Yeah. Okay, well, it's a bit similar to the first one. It's like, okay, so what are you not doing? What are you doing instead of the second one? Because I guarantee it's something you hope will bring you peace and fulfillment. But it won't, or at least it won't anything more than fleetingly. So if you're doing one meditation a day, you're only taking half the dose. And it's about 1/6 approximately as effective. So if you've ever taken a medication and not hit the clinical dose, you'll know when you do hit the clinical dose, it's like a light switch goes on, and suddenly, boom, it's working. That's the same for this. So if you do one a day, you're basically just scraping off the stress from that day. You're just processing the stress from that day. You do the second one, you get to work on the backlog of stress, which has been clogging you up and has been for years. So that's when the real healing happens in the second one.
Beautiful. So Matt, got a few more minutes left. Like, if people like what they've heard today, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best way to find out about what we do at Bondi Meditation Centre and about Vedic meditation is to come to a free intro talk. And we do them most Sunday evenings at 5:30 p.m. at Bondi Meditation Centre. So you have to come in. We don't do them online. But we'll make you a nice cup of ginger tea and hopefully make the talk quite engaging. And then you don't have to sign up for anything. You can just come along, have a listen, see what you think, go away and think about it or forget about it. Or if you like what you hear, you can sign up for a course and we'll get you going.
Beautiful. That's what I did.
Yeah.
And Instagram, Matt?
Instagram,
give you a follow?
Yep. Instagram is Bondi Meditation. And the centre, like you say, is at the top of O'Brien Street, just on the corner there. It's that old building. It's got a hairdresser on the corner. And we're upstairs.
It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful space, Matt, you've created.
Thanks very much.
Look, we might just leave it there, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for coming in today, mate.
Thank
I really
you, Chris.
appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.